So David Oyelowo has been one of my heroes for a very long time, and not just diversity hero, but just hero in general, mainly on an acting level. I grew up watching him in Spooks in the early to mid noughties, and I think he was probably like a real big influence as to why I wanted to become an actor. But anyway, I'm talking today about what it is he's doing to better representation and diversity within the UK film and TV industry. And I'm going to be drawing from his 2016 keynote speech at a BFI London Film Festival event. And in this speech, he focuses on 3 words: bias, perspective, and intention.
Are there better opportunities for black actors, black British actors in the US as opposed to the UK? Duh, is the first thing I think.
Welcome to video 3 in a 10-part series here on Hakuna MaChatter, in which I'm chatting about my diversity heroes, and they are people that are leading the way to better representation and diversity within Hollywood and the UK film industries. Like many of my diversity heroes, David recognises that it is the gatekeepers, the heads of studios, the people who are green-lighting films, who are saying yes or no. This is where we need to diversify so that more diverse storytelling can happen. And what he says is that talking about diversity is no longer an action. He is tired of going onto press tours, and he gets asked, you know, what are the levels of representation, blah 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 blah, and he's like,
so I watched interviews with Daniel Day-Lewis, Michael Fassbender. They get to talk about their movie.
Yo, says a lot. So anyway, he points out 3 words: bias, perception, intention. So let's start with bias. What he says about bias, it will be summed up within the example that he gives. He says he wrote a treatment for a new film talking about a British-American boxer, Bill Richmond, who was prominent in the 1800s. And he sent the treatment off to a big green lighting studio head. I don't know if they were head of studio, but someone that he at least labelled as a curator of culture. Now, he didn't name this person, he didn't name the studio they worked for, but the look in his eye, the way he was talking, you knew it was someone very well known, very big, very important. And he says that this person sent the treatment back with feedback saying that they loved it, absolutely loved it, that it was amazing, the characters, the story, the emotiveness, everything was great. However, they didn't feel that this film was a treat for them and that there were other parts of history they wished to revisit. So here's the thing with bias. This person, this curator of culture, was exercising their bias, and they were probably doing that consciously or unconsciously. That's the thing about bias, is that it can happen unconsciously. We're just used to a certain way, or seeing things in a certain way, or believing that things work only in a certain way and that anything new can never possibly work. I have bias. I mean, I have conscious bias. This channel, this video, is conscious bias. But yeah, this curator of culture didn't want to revisit a part of history that has never been visited again properly, at least in regards to film and TV. And actually, what they didn't deem a treat, David says, well, hang on a minute, I deem it a treat. That's why I wrote a bloody treatment about it. Treatment. Yeah, I just heard that. And look, it was that kind of bias that drove David Oyelowo out of the UK. He went to the US instead, and he was able to develop a career from there. Many actors here in the UK have done that. Idris Elba, David Harewood, Riz Ahmed, who is going to feature in a future episode on this series. Okay, so let's move on to perspective. And when we're talking about perspective, we're talking about how different people's perspective can influence how a story is told. And in his speech, David focuses on 3 films in particular: The Last King of Scotland, The Help, and Selma. Now, disclaimer before I move into talking about these examples, I've not seen The Last King of Scotland or The Help. I'm just working off of what David says in his speech. Now, a common thing with all 3 of these projects is that they were written by screenwriters who are all white, and so with that they have a certain perspective on the story that is being told. You see, all 3 of these films were originally written with white leads: James McAvoy in The Last King of Scotland, Emma Stone in The Help, and Tom Wilkinson in Selma. But then when a different perspective came in, and in particular the black perspective came into these films, suddenly things changed. And it was Forrest Whitaker in The Last King of Scotland and Viola Davis and Octavia Spencer in The Help. Now, as I said, I've not seen both those films, but everything that I have heard about those films, those are the three people I hear of all the time when it comes to what was achieved within those films. And if I remember correctly, David, in his speech, says that, you know, Forest Whitaker came and gave this powerhouse performance because of his perspective on what his character needed to be. And then suddenly the editor has a job to do of going, well, hang on a minute, I've got to make the film about this guy.
The protagonist of that film is James McAvoy's character, the Scottish doctor. In the script, Idi Amin was very much a supporting character. The fact that Forest Whitaker went on to win Best Actor would have been inconceivable at script stage.
And look, it's, you know, completely understandable that originally James McAvoy and Emma Stone were supposed to be the highlights of those films because, as I say, the people that wrote those screenplays, they were white, and so they are enforcing their bias and their perspective, which they're not wrong to do, but unfortunately these stories required a different perspective, and then this was even more so in Selma. And what David says with Selma is really interesting. So Ava DuVernay is credited as the director for that film, for she is the director of that film, but she was the third director to come onto that project. And pause video. Okay, just before I continue on here, there's something I've kind of got a little wrong, and as I go on, I want to make sure that you guys know the correct information. So even though David does credit Ava DuVernay with changing the perspective on Selma, he does also credit director Lee Daniels for doing it first, who came in just before Ava and in between the first two directors. So Ava was fourth director. Third director Lee Daniels, he was the one that shifted it from being a story about President Johnson to Martin Luther King Jr. Just want to make sure I got that right. Let's jump back in. Previous to that, there were two white directors and things weren't really working. And then David stepped in and suggested, well, hang on a minute, how about Ava DuVernay, who was someone he worked with on an independent film ahead of Selma. And luckily, because Oprah Winfrey was one of the producers on that film, on Selma, she turned around and said, yeah, come on, let's get Ava DuVernay in. And that's when the film Selma completely changed. And actually what I learned is that the film we see, the film we have, is nothing compared to the film we had at the beginning, and Ava DuVernay's perspective completely changed that film. And not just that Martin Luther King Jr. in a film about the march from Selma to Montgomery became a lead within that story, but that actually the female characters were given more as well. Coretta King suddenly actually became a flesh and bones character. David says previous to that, she was just on the end of a phone call. So just that small shift of having a black director coming in to tell what is a black story, suddenly the perspective changes and the representation increases. So that's kind of what I have to say about perspective. So let's move on to intention, because now that we have bias and we have perspective, what is your intention going forward? We're going to get into diverse storytelling. David points out a couple of film studios that really have the intention to do this. Pathé, who were one of the companies working on Cellmate's Film 4, BFI. And then from my point of view, from what I notice and, you know, from the things I watch, Lucasfilm, Marvel Studios, they have the intention to diversify their storytelling to diversify the people working on these stories as well. Intention is so important, as David says.
I am very cognizant of the fact that as it pertains to diversity, if you are not part of the solution, trust me, my friend, you are part of the problem.
Like, that's so true. Anyway, I'm going to leave you on another quote in which he gives, and I really love this one, and that is, diversity needs to be baked into the foundations of where the ideas flow from. And that's so true. If we're going to get authentic, diverse storytelling, it's got to be, it can't just be in front of the camera, it's got to be behind it as well. And we've got to diversify those people who are greenlighting what films are being made. So I like to also leave you with recommendations of what to watch. Go check out Spooks. In the US it's called MI5. That for me is where I first learned about David Oyelowo, and I've loved watching him ever since. Check out Selma. He has this incredible power as Martin Luther King Jr. to stir you up and make you want to go out and march right now. At least he did for me when I watched that film. I have a list of things I need to watch David Oyelowo. I need to go check out Queen of Katwe and The United Kingdom. I really look forward to watching them. And also, if you can find it, and I don't know where it is available to watch, I've not been able to look for it or find it so far, but check out, he's in an episodic adaptation of the book Small Island, which talks about the Windrush generation coming over from the Caribbean to the UK in the 40s, looking for a better life, looking for work, looking for a better life. As I said, I've not seen that adaptation, but I have seen a staged version here in London of Small Island. It's a great story. So if you can find that episodic TV drama, I really highly recommend checking it out. If not, read the book. Pick it up, give it a read, see what you think, let me know. So my next video in this series will be focusing on an actress who, she is just amazing. I tell you, she does something really quite unique compared to everyone else on this list, in that she is able to eagle eye onto the business side of representation and diversity. She sees where the money's going and she wants to place herself. And I'm not talking about just money in her pocket, I'm talking about what audiences are paying to watch. And she makes sure she is there in the middle, at the forefront, bringing justice to the stories and characters that are being told. It is Taraji P. Henson. I'm so excited for you to see this video. If you want to check it out, make sure you subscribe, turn on your bell notification so you can be notified when that video drops. Until then, let me know in the comments section below what y'all think of David Oyelowo. Do you love what he does in the way that I do? Have you seen the speech? If not, it will be in the description box. Holler at me, drop this video with a big thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Hakuna MaChatter.